Welcome to the Minimalist Educator Podcast, a podcast about paring down to refocus on the purpose and priorities in our roles, with co-hosts and co-authors of the Minimalist Teacher Book, Tammy Musiowski-Borneman and Christine Arnold.
In this episode, we speak with Amanda about arts in education. We discuss the importance of the arts, as well as how integrating the arts with other learning areas can deepen our learning. Amanda Koonlaba is a mixed media artist, set designer and muralist who holds advanced degrees in curriculum instruction and assessment as well as educational leadership. Her rich background as an artist and as a school leader have led her to become an influential teaching artist with the vision to transcend the boundaries of conventional education. Internationally acclaimed as a keynote presenter, Amanda shares her expertise on educational leadership through the arts, captivating audiences with her innovative approaches. Her visionary work extends to the Artful Literacy Centres, a groundbreaking program that seamlessly integrates the arts with literacy, fostering creative problem-solving skills. Amanda is known for her work with Party in the Art Room, where she bridges the gap between arts classrooms and general education through arts integration.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Today, we are excited to have a guest with us, Amanda Koonlaba, who is a fellow emerging leader from the ASCD program. Welcome to the show, Amanda. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to talk some art stuff with you today because I'm always looking at your pictures, and it looks like you have lots of fun stuff going on all the time. And how are you, Christine?
I am going well. I'm also excited to talk about the arts. It's always a fun topic to get into.
For sure. So, Amanda, I mentioned we're Facebook friends, and I often see a lot of the fun stuff that you do with art. So how did you first become interested in the arts, and why has it become such an important part of your life?
Oh, okay. So I have this story that I tell about when I was in the third grade, and there was this event called Art in the Park. And my parents were always really great at taking me to arts and music and theatrical things because we had a little of that in the school where I went, but it wasn't like we had a class dedicated to it. And my parents came from artsy families, musical families, so they would make sure to take us to those things. But there was this event, Art in the Park, and I just remember we had to bring a t-shirt. And my brother, they had told everybody just bring like a white package of t-shirts, but mine, I had to have a pink t-shirt. So my mom found me a plain pink t-shirt that I could paint on. And when I got there, we made string art on the t-shirt. So we just took yarn, dipped it in paint, and put it on the shirt and pulled it under a piece of cardboard. And it made this really cool design. And I was hooked. I was like, the main thing I knew about art at that point was like I could draw a house with the sun in the corner with my crayons. I could color in a coloring book with my crayons. But I was like, oh my gosh, you can do stuff like this. And it's like with paint, and it doesn't have to look like anything. It can be non-objective. It just opened my eyes to what like possibilities that there could be. And there were other activities too. I just really remember that t-shirt. I wore that t-shirt everywhere. My mom had to get me some pants that matched it. I mean, I just opened my eyes to the possibilities. I also really remember that there were a lot of people there. And I remember thinking, these are not the people I go to school with. These are people that I've not met before. And there was people who didn't look like me. There were people who weren't in my social group. And I remember feeling like that was something really special too at the time, thinking all these people can come together for this. Like art is for everybody. So that was really an impactful day for me as a kid as far as the arts go. But so I really fell in love with it then. So that's like me as a human being. But as a teacher, I have this story that I always tell too. You ready? I was so lucky that when I was coming out of college for undergrad, I did my student teaching at a school that was an arts integration school with Mississippi Whole Schools. Mississippi Whole Schools has different kind of levels for participation in their programming. And the school that I got assigned to was a model school. It's like the top tier, you had to prove, like it's like like winning an award to be a model school. So they were really doing arts integration like it should be done. It was like oozing from the walls of that campus. And I mean, I landed there as a student teacher, and then I managed to get hired at that school. And I worked in that environment for 6 years. And so it was really, and I said, we didn't have the arts, like individual classes for the arts when I was in elementary school, but we did a lot of project-based learning, a lot of hands-on stuff. So I had that in my background. And then I had only ever worked at this arts integrated school, and I just thought that's the way it was everywhere. And because I was, young, and I worked there for 6 years, and I got the opportunity. I was actually approached to go to another school in the district that was kind of across town to be the art teacher there. They were like, "Can you pass the praxis?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I can pass the praxis and teach art." But they said, "We want someone with that arts integrated background that can come here and help us. We need some leaders over here." And it felt like a really great opportunity to be art teacher plus sort of helping with the arts integration. I just couldn't believe the difference in the two schools. The school that I was at, where the arts were oozing from the walls, to move across town where they had like the bare minimum at that time, and it was a good school. They had not built up an arts culture at all. It was just like so eye-opening. And so I just started doing my thing in those art classes, and I just seeing those kids come alive and like they, in a way that I had not seen before, because I don't think they had it as much. I was just being everywhere, and I was seeing kids really get to do some of this stuff for the first time, and it really changed me. I really started to better understand like the equity around the arts, and what it can really do for kids. So there's like a story there about the arts and me as a human being, and then there's the story of me as an educator and how it became so important to me.
Amanda, I am loving your accent so much right now. I think I could just listen to you talk for hours. But I should probably ask a question and hear someone too. So what would you say to people who do find themselves, whether it's family or a teacher, who find themselves in a context where it is seen as art is an extra? It's a nice thing on the side, but like we're here for academics. What would you say to try and convince people to adjust their way of thinking about the arts?
I think I might try to give them some examples to look at, or some until it's almost like you can't see how not extra it is until you see it in action. So I would try to say, let's see if we can find you some examples. Or I would sit there and tell stories. I have tons of stories. I had this student at the new school where I was at. Had to do a lot of training, and we had to do a lot of grant writing to get all the teachers trained, and went to a lot of PD and stuff. One of the third grade math teachers came to me, and she's like, "My kids are not getting this. They're just not. And I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything." I was like, "Let's see if we can make up an arts integrated lesson." So I just made up something from scratch. It was a cubism lesson, and I worked with her to make sure she could teach it. I went to her classroom and kind of helped a little. And so she taught it to all of her classes, because she had they changed classes in the third grade. And one of her students came to me and he was like, "Miss Koonlaba, did you know my teacher was doing art in her classroom, and when we were doing math?" And he was like, "That was cool. I need that all the time." And it was so cute, but he didn't know that I had helped with that. And then later I was walking down the hall, and she was like, "Get in here, come in here. I want you to see this." She said, they got it. Like, they got it. Even the ones that I didn't think would ever get it, got it. And she was so proud of herself. And proud of her students. So I think that's a powerful story, and I love to tell that story because the kid appreciated it and it meant so much to him. And that was one of my students who was really having a particularly hard time that year. Didn't know if he was going to pass. It's third grade. They have to pass a reading test. There's just a lot going on for him. And this teacher, too, doesn't see herself as a creative person, didn't think she could teach it, but it was transformational for her. So being able to say this worked for my students, and for a kid to be like, that is something I need more of. I think that's powerful. I think it's powerful to tell those stories. I think that's helpful to people that maybe are on the fence or non-believers. But I would also say if we could find like videos, we have Mississippi Whole Schools has a ton of data around this too.
That is a powerful story, because when you do hear those kinds of words coming from students, like, this is what I need, then they can start advocating for themselves. And that's just like, isn't that what we want our students to do? To recognize, like, I'm good at this, I'm making connections, I need more of this.
It made him feel good too. Like, it was, I got the math, I got it, I can do something. And then there's just that emotional connection that you make to art when you're creating, and it just boosted his confidence. It made him feel good. I think that's why he said, I need more of that.
Yeah, for sure. And so that kind of leads into what I was going to ask you next. So it can be a great confidence booster for students and teachers, right? They might not recognize that, oh, I can bring these creative elements into my ELA class or my math or my science. And so what are some other benefits do you see that you've seen emerge with working with teachers and students from bringing arts into classrooms?
We saw a decline in some of our behavior, our unwanted behavior, and our numbers kind of went down at that school. I was there for 7 years, so we saw a lot of improvement there. With just the culture of the school became a much more positive, centered culture. I think feedback that I got from teachers, and I can say this for myself too, because I can understand the burnout. It's really easy, a real easy thing to get burned out because the job is so hard. But when you can be creative, like, it can help balance some of that out. Because it can be a social emotional thing for the teachers too. And it can balance out some of that stress. But I think there's a bonding aspect to the building relationships between the teachers and students that can happen around the arts in a way that some can't around a worksheet. And I think I have another story about that school. I'll tell it. We had a lot of like vandalism and stuff going on when I first got there. We had some windows that were shot. We had some break-ins where people destroyed things. And over the course of that 7 years, we started doing as much as we could to get the students and the families to help us make that campus artful. Like, we were painting murals on Saturday mornings. We would just have a family day, and people would walk from the surrounding neighborhoods that didn't have transportation. Their parents would come. Like, we had to do a lot of outreach and relationship building, but we could get them there. And especially when we would work on stuff during the school week with the kids, they like took so much ownership of that actual school campus, those school buildings. They were like, we can't destroy that. Like, that's ours. We did that. Or my sister was here 2 years ago, and she helped paint that mural. And that was part of us building a more positive culture too. It's just so many good things, so many benefits.
You mentioned already about integrating arts in math, and I definitely have so many anecdotal experiences where a kid might really, really struggle with number and operations, but as soon as you get to shape and space, like shining star when you're doing, the 3D models and, all of that stuff where you can incorporate the arts a little bit more naturally. But can you think of any other learning areas that just naturally go with the arts and the visual arts, and you can create and have a good time?
Everything. Not found a standard. I have not found a standard that hadn't been able to come up with a lesson for. I have schools call me all the time and they'll say, we cannot figure out how to teach this standard. Historically, the whole school struggles with this. And I don't, a lot of times, unfortunately, they've waited and it's their last ditch effort. They can't think of anything else to try before they call me, when I wish they would call in the beginning. Yeah, call me first. But I'm thinking right now about, I went to a 5th grade school and they were reading a story in their reading book. I can't remember the name of the story, but it was about the Boston Tea Party. And I found like the propaganda, like drawings that they printed and where they like had people print and make it look a certain way. And so I was able to bring those images in, and we analyzed those images for the elements of art, like line, shape, color, all of that. And it helped their comprehension so much because they better understood what all of the context around that story was. Maybe it was, Can't You Make Them Behave, King George? Does that have something about the Boston Tea Party in it? But it gave them so much more context. And I remember those teachers were like, well, you didn't know this, but we combined all of our students that were struggling with that into one room. So with that, whatever the standard was, it was something comprehension. I don't remember the number of the specific standards, several years ago, but they said we put them all in there so they could all get it. And she said, some of the ones that we would never have thought would have things to say about the Boston Tea Party were involved in that conversation. And I said, it wasn't me, it's the art. It's the art. That is like the hook. And I'm thinking too about another lesson that was science that I did at a school. They were, it was about the planets, and we looked at satellite images of planets, so that we looked at that like elements of art, like what lines do we see, I've done this with cells too, I think. What lines, what colors, what does that make you think of? What can you connect that to? And then it's like, well, what is that? What does that have to do with that planet? Is it a gas? Do we, so any subject, any standard, but a lot of times it just comes back down to that, like, let's look at something and get some vocabulary built. Like to start, that's like the heart of it.
I love that you are just so excited about like, yep, any standard can just do, pick one, we'll figure it out. And I think it would be so valuable. Well, I know it would be so valuable if there was someone like you that was available to way more schools, because I think it would just really open up a lot of learning for so many students that just don't like school, or just, it's not their thing. I say that loosely, but it's every kid's thing if the right things are happening there. And sometimes that's the arts, but they don't know what they don't know, right? So I know that you have a website and a business that you have called Party in the Art Room. Can you talk about some of the things that you do there?
Yes. So Party in the Art Room was born out of me going to that other school to be the art teacher, and just being so surprised at the way those kids were getting into what we were doing. And I was like, man, this is amazing. How can I help other people feel this and do this? And I was doing my national boards at the time, so I was doing a lot of writing. I just started a blog, and I was so shy about it at the time. I wouldn't even put my name on it. And we had a meeting for the art teachers in our district, and one of the other art teachers said, "Hey, Amanda, there's this really great website. I'm gonna tell you all about it." And it was I was like, "That's my blog." They were like, "You need to put your name on it." So when I put my name on it, I started getting a lot of, could you write an article for what we're doing, or can like PBS teachers and things like that, or want to do a presentation, can you help us figure things out? So it really just sort of, I didn't know it was going to play out like that, but it did. And I just really found a way to try to help more teachers. And so Party in the Art Room focuses a lot on the visual arts and trying to bridge the gap between the visual arts instruction and general education. I have a lot of gen ed teachers, elementary especially, who follow me and are on my email list, because it's so I can help them bridge the gap. Like this is not working, and what can I do? So I think I have more of an audience for general education teachers than art teachers, even though it's called Party in the Art Room. But I have recently been really trying to do more work around creativity and reaching administrators and like helping administrators and district leaders and just understand the importance of arts integration and what the arts can do across the board. I have this workshop that I do called Educational Leadership Through the Arts, and it's for like school leaders. I talk a lot about data and, what cultural change means and how the arts impact that. I do a lot of different things. I wear a lot of hats. I go to a lot of schools and teach for teachers for PD. I'll walk into their classroom and do a lesson with kids I've never met, but on something that they told me they needed help with. And then I will follow up with those teachers to help make sure that they can keep going with it, that they have the tools they need, but they got to see it in action with their actual students. So Party in the Art Room, but there's a lot kind of going on behind the scenes. I keep trying to figure out, how do I communicate about all the other online? It's, there's just a lot to do there. There's a lot of things to manage online.
That does sound like great PD, though, to actually see it come alive in action and have the follow-up afterwards. It's my favorite PD. I would so much rather be in the room teaching the kids and let the teachers watch it, because I think sometimes I was a teacher who was like, well, that's great if all the kids are well behaved and perfect and all have, their bellies full and everything's perfect all the time. Sure, they can, but when you get in the room with those actual students, you can really, that message really hits home that they can do it. And then the teachers see that they can do it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, Amanda, I think we're going to have to start wrapping up the end of the episode. But we do love to ask our guests for a pair down pointer if you've got one. It could be about arts education, or it could be something from your own life, something that would help our listeners.
So I want to bring it back to that vocabulary. Arts integration and the arts in schools can be a really massive, big thing, but the basic starting point, get your foot in the door. The most important foundational fundamental thing about it is vocabulary, and finding vocabulary that overlaps with whatever else it is you're teaching, and then teaching the art vocabulary words. And you can do so much with just that.
That's an awesome tip, because, we're all about streamlining and integrating. And whenever we can do that to make it easier for teachers to teach and kids to learn, it's just, gives us the goosies. So it's all good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amanda. I loved hearing about your passion for the arts.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode was brought to you by Party in the Art Room. Visit www.partyintheartroom.com to receive a free arts integrated guide packed with 25 ideas to align your art lessons with math and ELL standards.
Be sure to join Tammy and Christine and guests for more episodes of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. They would love to hear about your journey with minimalism. Connect with them at PlanZPLS on Twitter or Instagram. The music for the podcast has been written and performed by Gaia Moretti.